Here.
Heck.
Here.
Petrick.
Here.
Kaufman.
Here.
Klopp. Here. Palmer.
Here.
Miller. Here.
Great, looking for a motion to accept the minutes as listed. So moved.
Heck second.
Any comments? Roll call?
Petrick.
Yes.
Feiler.
Yes.
Miller.
Yes.
Heck.
Yes.
Betts.
Yes.
Kaufman.
Yes.
Klopp.
Yes.
Palmer.
Yes.
Fox.
Yes. Mr. Palmer, will you take care of the financial reports tonight, please?
I move that we accept the following financial reports as listed there, 4.1 through 4.12.
Heck second.
Any comments? Roll call?
Feiler.
Yes.
Miller.
Yes.
Heck.
Yes.
Betts.
Yes.
Kaufman.
Yes.
Klopp.
Yes.
Palmer.
Yes.
Fox.
Yes.
Petrick.
Yes. Any citizens or students wish to address the board pertaining to agenda items only? Seeing none, I'm going to move on to the reports and recommendations of the superintendent. Dr. Nassif.
All right, I have two items tonight. I'll defer the first one over to Mr. Pork about the Tulpe Times, our district newsletter.
All right, good evening, everyone. I want to preface this by making sure that we're clear in the intention of why I'm bringing this up, this conversation. I tremendously value the Tulpe Times in terms of communication to celebrate our students and to share the events that we have. But as I'm sitting back and kind of adjusting to my new role and observing and analyzing the systems that we have in place, I thought this would be a good time just to kind of have a conversation about how we're essentially putting the Tulpe Times together, how we're sharing and dispersing it. Are we doing it in a way that we're reaching people and celebrating students to max capacity, but then also to look at the time and the financial impact that the Tulpe Times has on the district, and looking at, you know, we could spend that money to communicate in different ways, to celebrate students and to share events, and then also we could look at putting that money to supporting students in learning needs as well. So after analyzing the system and working with Jen Gardula, my administrative assistant, the amount of time that goes into putting the Tulpe Times together, getting it printed, we spend around $15,000 a year, and the Tulpe Times is very text heavy, not a lot of graphics, and although it accomplishes, you know, celebrating students and kind of showcasing what we do on a quarterly basis, there are schools that have been going the direction of digital newsletters that can be sent electronically. It can reach far beyond the walls of our district. There's no page limit on that either, so we could celebrate more. We could share more pictures and more media and links. But after conversing with Jen a little bit about this, what we don't want to do is we don't want to miss an opportunity to reach members in our district that are not necessarily technologically savvy. We don't want people to miss events. So ultimately, what I'd like to do is kind of get some feedback from the board in terms of how open we would be to maybe looking at taking the Tulpe Times and creating an updated, you know, more celebrating with pictures and digital media that we could share out and blast out to community members, but then not lose the fact that we're sharing upcoming events with community members, and maybe look at supplementing with every marking period we send out a postcard that has, hey, here's the upcoming events for this marking period, so that we still have the spaghetti dinners, we still have the musical, we still have the concerts. But looking at doing that from a fiscally, you know, responsible standpoint of, can we condense what we're doing, impact students in different ways with that money, but also improve the product that we're sending out to the community and how it presents and represents and celebrates our students. So I know we've always done it this way, and I value it, so I'm not looking to get rid of it, just trying to get some ideas to see if that's something that we could explore, or do we continue how we've been doing.
Although I like making it better, I cringe if we're not going to send it out the way we do, because I feel that we're going to, too many grandparents that don't even own a computer, let alone want a computer, miss what's in that Tulpe Times. I think a lot of them look forward to getting it and reading it. Now, that's just my opinion of things I've seen.
I kind of agree with Chris, because I've had a lot of people over the years, and they're not, I mean, they don't, a lot of them don't use computers, but they say something about they see the Tulpe Times and they, and so you get a lot of comments from people that don't even have kids in the school, but they know what's going on and they appreciate what's going on. So I would hesitate to go fully that route. Now, if you can somehow put out, use our mailing list to get a response if somebody wants an email, and we can save money by doing half of an email or something. But I would really hesitate not to send out the paper copy. Because I think the community is really aware of what goes on through that paper. And it's just, and I know some people just outside our community get on and they say, oh, you're doing this much better than Hamburg sometimes I hear or something. It's nice to hear things like that.
That's what I was just gonna say, some of the way that mailing goes out, it captures some of our neighbors that maybe like are in Conrad Weiser or Hamburg or Schuylkill Valley. I would speak to Conrad Weiser side of it, and hear some feedback from them, and you're like, oh man, you guys do this, this, and this. And again, that's an older generation that is picking up on that, but obviously if they're seeing it, so is our community here.
So what is the realm, like how far out does it go, the mailing?
So outside of district-wide, my understanding is we also have businesses that are just outside the district that we've always sent mailers to. Every year, we sometimes we get them back and they'll take us off the mailing list. But it goes beyond just our residents as well, and it does go to some local businesses.
What about graduates, like they go to college and they send in Virginia because they're a grad, do they get it, or no, it's strictly?
To my understanding, we don't track alumni and send those out.
We deliver based off of postal
Okay.
code, so, 5,000 go to Burnville, 5,000 go to Rare, whatever.
Could we do a sign? Like if we put it out there and say, we plan to go digital, if you don't want digital, could you sign up? Could you have people sign up for it?
We talked about that as an option. This wouldn't be something, and it's not even something that we're looking to get rid of or change now anyway. But if that were a direction, communicating that and saying, hey, if you prefer to get that paper copy, we get on the mailer, and maybe like you said, maybe that knocks out a lot, and we kind of are hitting the best of both worlds.
And I'm sure equally so, there's a lot of younger people that would probably much rather see it on their
Right.
phone
Yeah.
and look at it versus waiting for it. I get both sides. I just don't want to completely get rid of it,
I
that
agree.
we miss a generation of people that look forward to reading it.
Right.
Sure.
Yeah, and I like the postcard idea. If you do, if you find there's a lot that want electronically, that's a great reminder. Of course, those people electronically could do a postcard, electronically and say, hey, just remember, this is coming up. But I definitely agree. The next is where we are at.
So if it's okay, what I'd like to do is, this is just communication. If I put something together in terms of what this could look like from a virtual standpoint that we can blast out to community members, but then also look at that plan of, hey, if you still prefer the paper copy, that way you can kind of see in comparison to what we're producing now. I think regardless, we can always do things better. So regardless, I'd like to look at, for lack of better words, giving it a facelift. And looking at making it more attractive as we're celebrating our students, something that we can be more proud of than we already are. But I'll work to put something together that we give a visual. And again, I value this. This is clearly something we're keeping because there's great value in communicating to the community. Just wanted to look at, if we've always done it this way, can we do it better? Can we make it better? And that's where I'm coming from in this conversation.
Where do we print that at now?
We print that through Myerstown, Little Mountain Printing in Myerstown.
Okay.
So it used to be through BCTC, but the printer they used broke. It was too expensive for them to fix it, and so they basically dropped us and left us scrambling. And it's crazy, is there's not a lot of places to get mass printing done. was, the IU was another option, but it was like triple the cost. Yeah.
Is it out of the realm for us to look at a printer to print it ourselves? I mean, I don't know what's involved with that, or what the price is, just curious. Depending what you're paying per year, I don't know what that cost is, but.
Well, then there's also the time, I'm thinking, that we're paying staff to do that.
Yeah. Probably, I mean, we can get prices, it probably is, probably, if you factor in the time, and, I don't know. I mean, it could be something, if we find that we have so little, that want it, then we would do it in-house and get it printed that way.
But here is though, if we put something out, are the families that do read it, and now they have to send something back or go online, is it gonna happen?
Well,
It just
what
kind of fades away.
It should almost be where they enroll in
To
the
get
paperless.
paperless, I
Otherwise,
agree.
they continue to get,
But I think it just goes out to postal customers, postal route.
that they're not gonna renew it, yeah. Or could,
You know what I mean? I think it'd
Yes.
be more management on our end
yes.
per address, you have to flip that. It's probably easier just to, it's either all or
Does
none.
that affect the bulk reading from the post office if they're on the specific addresses and too?
I would think it does. Because then it'd be a true delivered item, it wouldn't be just a
Yeah.
postal route. I'm assuming it would affect it.
We separate them by zip code.
Yeah.
We said that we give it to the post office in bags of zip codes.
Well, that's what happened. Just get all those.
Yeah, but how would they, it would have to go through the mail system to get delivered, because they wouldn't know who to give it to. This way, they're giving it to every stop gets one.
Yeah, then we'd have to print addresses on it too.
Right, so I could draw up, we had a couple different scenarios, and list ideas, so I could share those with you. I mean,
Keep boring.
we had even talked about printing out that first one, that big first one at the beginning of the year with the lists, and then maybe went digital, and then that postcard supplement, like, we had different ideas, just to kind of change it up. So I'll definitely kind of get those on a condensed document, just want to get some feedback, initially.
The postcard idea, though, I don't know, we don't do that for like our musical or anything. I mean, I don't know what that cost.
Well, that's what we were saying, you know, more people are gonna put a postcard on their refrigerator
Yeah.
before they put a newsletter on their refrigerator.
Right,
Yeah.
save the dates, like, check it
Right.
off, I mean, you see that all the time with weddings and big events. So
Yeah.
that's where that idea
Yeah.
came from.
Well, Martin
What if
Luther
you
King-
went digital, but then also did like fish wrapper? You know what I mean, where you put them in places, like warnings or
Yeah.
foyers or.
It's interesting.
Throwing it out there.
That's what we, I talked to the superintendent at Brandywine, and that's what they do. They do a digital copy. If somebody calls a request, they'll do a print copy, but then they print, you know, a handful of them up and put them in the businesses in the district. The only other item I have is just continuing with the results of the survey from the specials. So we did narrow it down. We split it between music, STEM, PE, and agriculture. And it did come back 41.5%. We had 147 responses. So we think that probably accounts, if you figure 2 to 3 kids per family. We probably captured about 60% of families, we think. And 41.5% came back in support of keeping the current structure with the music being there. So I think our recommendation would be to remain with the current structure we have and bring on and hire a second music teacher. Given time, is the board okay if we, in the next 2 weeks, interview, extend an offer, and then bring, be able to bring that offer and hopefully on board, and then just retro the person that we would hire.
You have a good candidate.
Yeah. Right. All right, that'll end my report.
Any notices and communications, Ms. Scott? You want to take care of items for action right away, please?
9.0.1, I make a motion to approve the articles of agreement letter and resolution with BCTC making transportation to BCTC and back the district's responsibility is effective 2023 and 2024 school year.
Excellent.
Any comments? So just curious, our BCTC enrollment right now currently, if we had to do this year, how many vehicles does that add per day?
We would need, right now we're running 2 routes to east and 2 to west.
So 4.
Yes.
4 vehicles.
The overall, we had a meeting today at BCTC. What this will do is it will reduce their budget by, pulling the transportation out reduces the budget by 1.6 million. And then they estimate, then that we will see, in accordance with what that savings will be. I don't want to say it's 1.6 because obviously expenses will rise as they go. What really is driving this is this year alone, they had to put some runs out. The IU no longer has Tulpehocken, but they did not, BCTC thought the IU would bid on all the runs. They did not, and I understand, most of the drivers stayed with the district, and so it drove up the cost of transportation by $500,000 this year because they had to negotiate individual contracts. So they're looking to get out, but it is in the articles that they provide transportation, so they're looking to reduce that service. And we've known about it for about a little over a year that they're looking to do this.
Do you have an estimate of what it would cost them to do it?
Daily rate.
Based on our contract.
We're about
Do we have an estimate of what it cost us to do it based on our current contract?
Probably 50,000 a bus, 200 less reimbursement, probably $100,000. Because 50% reimbursement, which we think will go down from there. So
Probably reduce our PCTC cost, I think it's 7% or something.
I think that's what it is, yeah.
How does that equate? What is that number? Do you know offhand?
Yeah.
$45,000.
So we're out about 6,000.
5,000. But 7% though, I mean, they should calculate it based on what our cost, what percent of our costs were, I gotta believe our costs were higher than everybody else's because of the distance.
I don't know, they talked about before, they were talking about 5%, so I don't know.
Yeah, they gotta weigh it.
The only benefit, the only thing though is to think about our costs were higher, but everybody else bore those costs, you know what I mean? Wow.
Yeah.
I know what they're gonna come back and say.
Any other comments? Roll call.
Rissmiller,
Yes.
Heck,
Yes.
Betts,
Yes.
Kaufman,
Yes.
Clough,
Yes.
Palmer,
Yes.
Fox,
Yes.
Petrick,
Yes.
Feiler,
Yes.
9.0.2, I make a motion to approve the independent contract with Barb Wheeling to provide professional services to train replacement and complete needed projects for the position of administrative assistant for the assistant superintendent and taxes.
Excellent.
Any comments? Roll call.
Heck,
Yes.
Betts,
Yes.
Kaufman,
Yes.
Clough,
Yes.
Palmer,
Yes.
Fox,
Yes.
Petrick,
Yes.
Feiler,
Yes.
Rissmiller,
Yes.
I'd just like to thank Barb for her time. She really helped us a lot. She did the Tulpe Times, so she had to spend a lot of time with Jen to show her how to use everything and the taxes. She told Jen everything about that, so that was great. She's pretty much done now.
Moving on to finance, Mr. Palmer.
Oh,
Good legislation. All right. Resolution of tax assessment discussion, Mr. Bowles.
Right, I have a resolution for your consideration tonight. And what it is that there's an appeal pending in the Pennsylvania Supreme Court about tax assessments. It involves the Wilson School District. And what it has to do with is, there was a case back in 2017 called Valley Forge Towers versus Upper Marion School District. And Upper Marion School District filed an appeal regarding an apartment complex. And that apartment complex, they believed was underassessed. They actually filed an appeal. The school district intervened in that case, thought it was underassessed, moved to have the assessment increase. What the Valley Forge Towers apartment complex did was said, wait a second, you don't have any policy in place for determining who you file appeals with, who you intervene with in these assessment appeals. And in the Valley Forge case, the Commonwealth Court said, actually the Supreme Court said, that's true. If you don't have a policy in place to determine how you're going to intervene and who you're going to intervene with and against, it becomes basically a random and arbitrary process where you're involved in assessment appeals. The reason that what this resolution will do is it authorizes the business office, with our assistants and or appraisers, to evaluate properties when they file assessment appeals themselves. And then we can take a look at it and recommend to you, which is our current practice, and recommend to you whether or not you should file or intervene in that assessment appeal. It also indicates that the business office, the school board authorizes the business office to retain an appraiser when necessary in these circumstances, and then to file any assessment appeals that are necessary. The examples that I give you in, we have one school district where we were involved in an assessment appeal for a warehouse. It was assessed at approximately, I think it was $18,000. They were trying to have it reduced to 12. During the course of that appeal, that warehouse sold for $80 million. And so we then added to our appeal that it was underassessed and moved it up. They filed a motion to strike saying, wait a second, we're here on our assessment appeal to lower it. This has nothing to do with the increase. Well, those cases take more than a year. The following year, we filed our own assessment appeal against that property so that we think we got it the first time that that's part of intervening in the case. But in case not, we also filed a second appeal the following year. You need to have one of these policies in place to cover those sorts of things. In two other cases in that same school district, they filed appeals, and our appraiser said, wait a second, this isn't worth less. It's worth more than the current assessment. That happened with a giant grocery store and a large manufacturer. And so in those cases, they were actually increased in assessed value. And so what this policy does is allows you to do that. And then secondly says, it sets a floor that says your policy would be that you're not going to be involved in any assessment appeals where a property would be potentially under-assessed by less than $150,000. In other words, the assessment deviation's got to be more than $150,000. And frankly, you're probably not even going to go that low because it doesn't warrant the involvement of the appraiser in our office and things like that. You're looking for the large discrepancies, the 18 million to 80 million, the 14 million to 40 million type of assessments are really the only ones that you'd be interested in. But what this policy does is allows you to just stay active in your assessment appeals to the extent necessary, and if they are underassessed, you can then intervene and get involved. And where these things get discovered, the way the $80 million property was discovered, we were involved in a completely different assessment appeal in that school district, and it was a warehouse, and we had the appraiser doing an appraisal, and when he did it, he went around and did comps, and checked all the most recent sales, and when he came back to us, he said, by the way, the warehouse 2 down just sold, a month ago for $80 million. You may want to look at that one too. And that influenced the one that we were fighting too, because if that one's worth that much, the other one maybe worth considerably more as well. So the case involving Wilson was briefed and argued this summer. We probably get a determination sometime in the winter as to what they're going to do. This is the policy, or something very, very similar, that they used that the Commonwealth Court upheld. So this policy would put us in good shape until we get the decision from the Supreme Court, and if necessary, we'll make any changes after we hear what the Supreme Court decides. So this just kind of keeps you in the game of the assessment appeals in your larger commercial transactions or larger assessed transactions.
So how do we have the property owners in the district understand that we're not going after residential and agricultural properties?
Well, first, your policy here, the way it's written is your policy says that you're not looking at any properties that you would believe would be under-assessed by more than $150,000.
Well,
Berks County assessments are all over the
that
place.
floor needs to be a lot higher because that'll hit half the homeowners in this district.
No, because the assessments, remember the assessments, it's the assessment times the state tax equalization board factor. So an assessment today, if you have a house and your house is assessed at $100,000, and that was done, let's say, in 1993, when the last assessment was done. You then take that assessment times the state tax equalization board's common level ratio, which this year is 2.22%. So you multiply that 100,000 by 2.22, the fair market value of that property is imputed to be $222,222. So that would be the assessment that you're looking at, the fair market value. So you have to multiply it by the common level ratio, not just the assessment. Yeah, all the assessments are way off because we haven't done a reassessment since 1993 in Berks County. But you then multiply it by the common level ratio. That's where you would make your determination.
So what's the issue with raising the floor?
No, none. But it's not. It's
So
not
what
the
is
assessment.
this protecting us from? Because I
Protecting
don't
you
know,
from not being.
I'm one of 9, but I have no interest in going out looking at our tax values.
Well, it protects you from not being able to participate in a large commercial assessment appeal that is let's say one of your warehouses is assessed at $35,000, because you take the inverse of the common level ratio for assessment, so it's at 37 million, it's now 45%. So you take 37 million times 45%, that would be the new assessment. If that property sold for $80 million, you would then take $80 million times 45% to get the new assessment, not 37 million times 45. So you could be out of the game tens of millions of dollars if you don't have a policy like this. But you can change the floor. You can change the floor to 250, change the floor to 500,000.
So in Brian's example, the $100,000 house, $222,000 is
Yep.
what it should be.
Correct.
If it's assessed at $300,000, if it's sold for $300,000,
Yep.
that's less than $150,000.
That's less than
so we would
150.
just ignore that. But if
Exactly.
it sells for $400,000, you're over the $150,000 threshold, so you would appeal that.
Now you
So
would.
you're saying
I'm not interested in going after
Not you would.
I'm not interested
Okay,
in
wait,
going
let me,
after homeowners.
okay,
Talking about
wait,
it.
wait, not you would appeal it, you could appeal it.
Right.
You have the authorization to appeal
Okay,
it.
but how do we make
But you cannot discriminate
That's
on
right.
homeowners. You can't just simply say, I'm only going after commercial, because then you're.
Set the floor 500,000.
Yeah, you can do that.
Our concern
Set the
with
floor to
Use
$1 million.
this stuff.
Okay, but then if you set it at $1 million, then you're gonna, if you set the floor at $1 million, then you're gonna essentially eliminate all residential assessment appeals, and then your policy's
I
gonna
think that was my intention.
then your policy's not any good. Then the Supreme Court, under the Valley Forge case, you can't do that. You can't say, I'm
You
just,
said you were after the large commercial.
we are, but you can't set a policy that just simply discriminates against
Gotcha,
residential.
okay, I
Yeah.
understand.
Policy itself.
Or protects residential.
Is the
That's-
concern,
Okay, I follow.
is the concern when the warehouses get to year 10 and they're paying full taxes, that one of them will turn around and appeal.
Oh, they will.
And we won't have a policy in place to protect us.
So we don't have any of them warehouses. There's,
There's three of them are still,
That's
and they're at
what
80,
Dollar
80%.
General-
yeah, I was gonna say, they're almost there.
They're
Yeah, they're
almost
almost
there,
there.
But we have a
Everyone
lot
else
of,
is
we have a
paying.
lot of
Full
them that are
price.
in orders too. The warehouses will come in, they typically, they hire the same group of attorneys and the same group of appraisers, and they do it on about a 3-year rolling basis, and they just come back, and they come back, and they come back, and they refile and refile and refile. I mean, that's what they do in other districts, they just keep rolling through, coming back and reassessing. Same thing with the shopping centers, same thing with the Home Depots and the Lowe's and the Walmarts, they all do the same thing. About every 3 years, maybe 4 years, they refile their assessment appeals. They come in and they say, my building's obsolete, it's not the right size, the ceilings aren't right, and you're back in the fight all over again. If you don't have a policy, you're going to be out of luck based on the Valley Forge case. Yeah, that's fine. So for example, the way that would work then, to follow what Tom was saying, if you had a house assessed at 100, it was assessed at 100, you would multiply that by 2.22%, so 222,000. We wouldn't go after that house until it exceeded $722,000. If that house was worth $800,000, doesn't mean we would file an appeal. It's just that somebody would report back to you and say, is this an assessment appeal you want, are you interested in or not? As a practical matter, probably $600,000, $700,000, you're not going to file that appeal. It's not typically worth it.
But isn't that picking and choosing? That's
You
discriminatory.
can pick and choose, but you need to have a policy upon which you pick and choose. So,
Policy is saying if it's over 500, you can appeal.
no, it says in forward policy, you can. Yeah. You can still look at it and just say, just incrementally, it's not worth our effort to do it.
So if this policy's in place, 10 houses sell under that thing, and we decide we're not going after any of them, and a warehouse sells and we go after the warehouse, can somebody come back and say
They could, but you would have a policy where you'd be able to point back and say, we set the floor at 500,000. We have the ability to file the appeals. We determined after talking to the appraiser, after talking to the solicitor, after talking to the business manager, that those weren't worth filing. Now, a court, or let's say it's the apartment complex here, would then have to say, okay, your decision was wrong. We can defend your decision not to do something. If you have no policy in place, they're going to say, so what was that based on? How did you decide that April Pop's place wasn't going to get an assessment appeal? Oh, if you have nothing in place, then it becomes, well, you just arbitrarily decided that one wasn't going to get appealed.
it's all the more reason to get rid of property taxes? And you don't need to worry about this shit, you fund it a different way. This all goes away.
That's another discussion.
I find it hard to you start talking about, in my mind, and I hear what you're saying, but it sounds like you're starting to target certain people or certain businesses with taxes, and that just doesn't ring well with me.
I'm right there with you.
Gotta say that.
I can't get my head wrapped around. I need some time.
I mean, I'm assuming we're gonna get this and we can read through it before we're gonna have any kind of move or anything. But I wanna read it pretty thoroughly before I,
No, we don't have any appeals. Yeah. I guess to answer that question, we're not the legislative body that decides real estate taxes aren't the ones we're going to use. We're stuck. If you end up with a circumstance where a property sells for $80 million, they got an assessment appeal, and they drop their assessment down to, say, from $37 to $18 million, you owe that duty to the taxpayer to collect that $80 million assessment from some REIT, some real estate investment trust that owns a warehouse out there.
I
It's our
get
duty,
that, but
it's our
what's
duty, but
the
that's-
liability to the district if we don't do the same to a homeowner?
There is no liability if we have a policy in place. If we have no policy in place, then you're only opening the door to the warehouses to challenge your assessment appeal process. You're not I'm not gonna appeal the homeowner's assessment, that's fine. But all that you're doing if you don't adopt this is you're just leaving the door wide open for, you know, a large commercial property to come in and challenge the method by which you chose to challenge their assessment.
Which they could have done for the past.
They could have. Yeah, I mean, we're just telling you, we're telling you this because the case is pending on appeal right now. So this is current, you know, brand new stuff.
It sounds like you believe they're gonna challenge us. That's something.
They will, eventually, yeah, they will. I mean, these guys are not offices, it's all the same attorneys, it's all the same
That's
appraisers.
what they do for a living.
It's what they do for a living.
Discussing this now, you almost gotta move pretty soon or not, because you just put it out the public.
And that's what I mean, and I'll be
Put the
blatantly.
policy in place or you don't.
Yeah, I'll be blatantly honest.
Well, but the people in the, everybody that owns these buildings knows this. They know the Valley Forge case, and they know Wilson's appeal is being heard in the Supreme Court. There were, I don't know, 8 or 10 amicus curiae briefs filed in that case by all kinds of, you know, real estate investment trusts and, you know, people like that filed additional briefs on behalf of the commercial manufacturers like that. So, I mean, in that world, it's known. Everything, this is all known. Nothing new there. Nothing new for them. It's reasonably new for
I'll
us.
be brutally honest here, I think you put us on the spot and put us in a tough position, but I'll be honest, I don't like it.
Well,
You kind of sprung this on us, this is almost a legal matter, and I feel like you twisted our arm into it.
you don't have to.
I know,
You have-
but we're kind of in the spot now.
Well,
And maybe I'm just misinterpreting the whole thing, and that's why I said I need some time, I need to read it, I can't wrap my head around it. But I feel uncomfortable with the position I put in.
if we have an assessment appeal and it's filed, and we currently have one that gets appealed, you know, next week, you don't have this policy in place, and they file a challenge like this, what are you going to say then? We didn't tell you. Why didn't you advise us of that? And that's you know, I can't just bring happy news.
I
to the board.
understand
You know,
that.
This is just what it is, and the case is pending. It's on appeal.
How long has it been pending?
Since May.
It's September.
This was sent up in July.
It's September.
What are you saying?
So it was set up in July, why do you make it swear for July, bro? I don't want to get the heated discussion here in the board, but this is the first time I'm hearing about it, how about anybody else? I'm not trying to be a jerk around, but that's where
And
I'm
I will say, it did come to Tom and I in July. But I think Tom and I have the same concerns that you guys have as well, is, you know, what I understand, because if you look at, you really would, you look at the colonial property out by Midway, you get outfits like Amazon who come in and totally gut that warehouse, add, you know, an underground storage freezing, you know, unit and bump up the value of that. That's ultimately what you're looking to catch. But I've also been, and Tom and I have both been in districts where they have had policies in place where they go after all the homeowners, and so, you know, I will be honest, our hesitation has been, and that's why it's not on the agenda as a voting item, it's on the agenda as a discussion item.
Anybody have any other comments?
I'm assuming this is gonna come out to us to read the full
You
policy.
do have the resolution.
So it came out.
Yeah.
That was the exception of 500,000.
Yeah.
So it'll be what we had, that we had to have.
What was it?
What we're seeing now, yeah. I mean, you could set it at $1 million, but I guess then you are discriminating.
Then you're going to start to discriminate. If you could justify that you had enough residential properties that would apply to, then you could.
Or
do most districts that you deal with have it set at?
Wilson's is set at 150.
I won't go for it. Yeah, there's no
Let's give everybody time to read the policy, and we can have further discussions and come back with it.
believe that minimum 500.
At least we're going like 500.
You're talking about assessed value, not actual real property value.
Difference, $500,000 difference,
In
difference.
difference in assessed value.
Versus
Real value.
Mark, I paid sales price.
Right.
So that's, if your assessed value is 100,000 times 2.024, or whatever,
Right.
whatever that, 222. So now that property's worth 200,000. So it would have to sell for 700,000 before this policy could even come into play.
Correct. And then, if it did, if it sold for 800,000, if Tom noticed it, he might or might not notice it because he would get transfer tax, so he might notice it. If he noticed it, he could bring it back to you and say, is this one that's worth, reviewing? We talked to the solicitor, we talked to the appraiser. Is this one the board's interested in? The board can say yes or no. Then you have a policy in place that's rationally based, it sets a floor and sets a limit, and you make the decision whether you file an appeal. It doesn't take you out of the appeal filing business. You still have to make those decisions. And when we do get involved in assessment appeals, you always pass a resolution authorizing us to do that. You'll say, authorize us to enter appearance, and you also do a second part of it that says, and to intervene in the assessment appeal. Because 99 out of 100 of these cases are assessment appeals filed by the landowner trying to get his assessment reduced.
Right.
We often go to the assessment board hearing. We don't typically bring in an appraiser with us. We go to the assessment board hearing and we listen to what they have. And sometimes they have an appraisal, sometimes they don't. But we listen to what their basis is for why they think the properties are assessed. The assessment board makes a decision. They always make the decisions in October. And in the end of October, they issue their decisions. When we get the decision in the mail, we then look at and see what the assessment board did with it. Did they drop it, or did they leave it the same? They don't increase it. They'll either drop it or leave it the same. If they drop it significantly, those are the things then you would have brought back to you to say, hey, this one was dropped, and it was dropped this much. Our appraiser thinks it's worth more than that. And you would then authorize an intervention in that case and authorize an appeal to be filed. And if the appraiser thought it was worth not only more than what the assessment board dropped it, but more than what the current assessment is, then you would also authorize the appeal to increase the assessment. But it still would ultimately be your decision. You could look at a warehouse and say, we're just not interested. It's not enough money to make it worth our while as well. It doesn't have to be residential, it could be a commercial property.
The way this is written, how far would this go before the board would possibly know about it and vote on it? Because a lot of this says that we're authorizing the business office along with a solicitor
Correct.
to enter agreements. The next, that's number 2. Number 3 says that the board authorizes the business office along with you, professional appraiser, same thing with 4. Like I think, this is just my opinion, that, and I don't know, I'm fairly new to this, but
And that's actually
this stuff would be brought up before
correct.
we get.
It's a really good question because the assessment appeal period typically is July 15th to August 3rd. And so somebody can file an appeal up to the last minute. And then they schedule the hearings in September. So occasionally what happens is, both here and other places, is an assessment appeal gets filed the 28th of August. A hearing gets set for September 9th. And so Tom gets notice of the assessment hearing. He'll typically call us and say, pick a warehouse out there. Warehouse X just filed an assessment appeal, and there's a hearing on the 9th. You may not have a board hearing at the time. We would simply attend the assessment board hearing. We don't have time to get an appraisal, we don't have time to go in. We would just go in, sit in the assessment board hearing, and hear what they had to say. Come back and report to you and say, by the way, XYZ warehouse filed an assessment appeal here's what they think the property's worth, here's what the assessed value currently is, and we would advise you that's going on. Nothing will happen until the end of October, between the 15th and 30th, when they issue the decisions. The decisions get issued, and then you have 30 days to file an appeal from those decisions. That part we're good on, because if they come out the 15th to the 30th of October, and we have 30 days, you'll have a meeting. And in that meeting period, we would come to you, and we've done this in the past, and rushed in at the last second and said, hey, there's an assessment appeal, we're not completely comfortable with it, we're going to file it, we're going to intervene in the assessment appeal and protect your interests. We then contact, and we'll then say to you, and we want to hire an appraiser. We then contact the appraiser and have him go out and look at it. And he'll, in many cases, and this has happened here, he's looked at these assessment appeals and said, no, they're right, that's perfectly fine, don't worry about it. We withdraw our appearance, we withdraw our intervention, we walk away from it. There's other times he'll say, I can't tell until I get a full-blown assessment, but my instinct is that it's significantly higher than what they think it is. That all takes months. That takes 3, 4, 5 months till all that comes together. All that time, we're reporting back to you what's going on and telling you, here's what the appraiser said. Now, normally the appraiser will take a first look at it and not charge us to do that. He's just going to eyeball and say, hey, the price per square foot for these warehouses is this thing's 1 million square feet, it should be about this value. They think it's worth half. We don't think so. And he'll do that just gratis for us to give us an idea of where it should be. But all those things will happen. The only part that this is really authorizing the business office to kind of start the ball rolling, which is at first hearing in front of the assessment board, which is if Tom gets notice of one, he notifies us so that somebody can get to that hearing and hear what these people are saying or why they think it should be, why they think it's over-assessed and should be reduced. Now, if it happens to hit a meeting time, then obviously we come to the meeting and say, hey, Tom sent us an assessment appeal, we have a hearing on Friday, we don't know much about it, but we'll find out and report back to you. All this is doing is allowing that little interim process to take place so that you don't get shut out.
So,
And essentially this has been the practice that you've had. This is putting it on paper.
so sometimes when, let's say a property's not sold, but it's moved from father, mother to children, and the property would be assessed in the meantime for whatever value may be, is that going to be, would like something like that fall into?
No.
Or would it have to be at a sale only?
At a sale. The only way, if properties are transferred between parents and kids, or brothers and sisters, or friends, if it's not a sale, it's just it's either a gift or a transfer from two individuals to an LLC or something like that, that's not going to get picked up. The county does not come out and reassess on transfers. In fact, they don't reassess on sales either. So they don't reassess, if you sell your house, they don't reassess on the sale. The only time they'll reassess is if you put an addition, if you pull a building permit, they're going to reassess based on the building permit. So you finish your basement, put a bathroom down there, and they say, oh, your property's worth $35,000 more, they'll reassess. But to Bill's point, that would not hit this radar here because the assessment went up by $35,000, not $500,000. So transfers would be exempt. Sales are exempt because the county does not reassess on sales. They only reassess on either building permits or, and that's the problem with the warehouses and some of these other properties is the county doesn't go out and reassess if Amazon sells a warehouse for $80,000 or $80 million. Just doesn't happen. They know about it. We know about it because we get the transfer tax. But nobody goes out and readjusts that assessment. And that's why the assessments are so out of whack, because those things are not being picked up. But ordinary transfers and sales are not reassessed.
So does it make sense that if we were to if there was a property that, you know, if there is support for this, if there is a property that we want to pursue that somewhere in here, number 10 or whatever, it says, the board authorizes that.
That's what I was
Yeah.
getting at.
Yeah, kind of what you said. That the background stuff can happen, but before it is green lighted, it comes before the board, they understand this is a $20 million difference, and this is one that we pursue. You know, even in a market where we've seen properties just skyrocket, you know, I think you could justify not pursuing some and others, you know, to justify that it's just an inflated market right now.
Yep, in number 6, what we're saying in number 6 is the board authorizes the business office to examine STEB reports, which is State Tax Equalization Board reports. That's where the common level ratio comes from. To determine which properties would be appealed to the assessment board for coming tax years, provided they're potentially underassessed by a minimum of 100. So it could say the board authorizes the business office to examine them and to report to the board for approval which properties will be appealed to the assessment board for upcoming assessment. Now, we have to be a little careful there because we should say either approve or ratify, because the timing of the assessment board hearings in September, you know, Tom gets appeals the last week, a lot of them come in the last week in August, and then those hearings just get set up in mass for 3 or 4 straight weeks in September. So as long as the
In
board...
the 5th paragraph, it says that they'll ratify the existing actions, but again, that's after the fact, so.
Somewhere put in what Andy was saying about the board.
Approve it.
Approve the
Sure.
board. If they can't appeal after
After the
30th of August, then we have time to review this and get what we want.
We do, although we don't know what ones are coming yet. We don't know what ones are in the pipeline.
But wouldn't they be able to argue that that was after they appealed it anyway, that we put a policy in place to protect ourselves?
Right.
We've had one appeal hearing, there's 4 more scheduled for October 40th. That's all I have so far.
We have 4
4 scheduled, yeah. They're
5
all residential.
4.
They're all residential, and the one that was appealed already has already been acted on.
So it's nothing that's gonna affect us.
No, no. They're all
So
residential.
you're 5, you have no commercials in your 5. Then you're okay. You're okay for now. You still should have the policy in place, but you're okay for this.
So let's get it the way we want it.
Yeah.
Then we got, and what I'm saying is we have a little bit of time to fire it, right?
If you only have 5 and it's 5 residential, that's okay. And as far as the residentials are concerned, right now you would take, to determine if you're over-assessed on your own residence, you take your current assessment, multiply it by 2.2%, and then if that's the fair market value of your house, then you're properly assessed. If you multiply it by 2.2%, that drives out a number that's higher than your property, than your assessment, than what you think the value is, you could file an assessment appeal in order to have your residential property reduced.
I understand why we have to do it. I don't like it because it seems like it's just more government control regulation. I understand why we gotta protect it. I don't like it. But like you said,
Although it is, it's memorializing how you operate. Just the number, we never had the floor. But we can make a revision to paragraph 6 that the board has to approve it, and set the floor at 500,000.
Everybody all right?
Let's support it for now.
that gives us something to review.
All right. Yeah. 9.1.1. Approve the amendment to the STS
Kaufman,
Yes.
Pop,
Yes.
Palmer,
Yes.
Fox,
Yes.
Petrick,
Yes.
Feiler,
Yes.
Rissmiller,
Yes.
Heck.
Yes. Number 1.2, approve the locking price of $3.0852 per gallon of heating oil for the 2022-2023 school year with PAPCO Incorporated, World Connect Energy Services.
Bob second.
Any comments? Roll call?
Kaufman,
Yes.
Pop,
Yes.
Palmer,
Yes.
Fox,
Yes.
Petrick,
Yes.
Feiler,
Yes.
Rissmiller,
Yes.
Heck,
Yes.
Betts.
Yes.
What about, this air conditioner units, what do we ever come up with that?
So, we have installed, the majority of the units, correct, Chris, are in the classrooms. About 60% of the classrooms are finished.
Yes, sir, there's still some wiring that needs to be done for the high school.
We have significantly brought temperatures down in those areas. Some of the larger classrooms we put 2 in. What they did is they took a PVC board, and sealed up the window, and then it's slotted in there. There are also dehumidifier units, so that has been probably the biggest impact, is drying the air in there. But the teachers that have these units have given us very positive feedback. So the temporary solution is working. You know, some of our hottest rooms, we've gotten some feedback is, now it's really getting cold, so, which is positive. And there is some wiring. They did some wiring this weekend. There's, the way the rooms are, the junior high is all on, each room is on its own separate breaker, but the high school, there are some rooms that 2 are on the same breaker or 3, so they're trying to split it out and kind of work through that. But we are able to pull the power from different areas.
Any plan in place for the old sewer building at Bethel Elementary that still has broken windows and vines growing up and the weeds are still 3 feet high?
So we did talk about, Heston did ask Tom and I how we should pursue that. Where we left it is, do we have the equipment to do it ourselves, or do we need to rent the equipment? So that's where it's at. This week, our second grounds person, or our full-time grounds person came on board. So that's kind of where we were measuring yesterday. Kind of measuring what manpower we have and then what equipment we need to be able to do it. But there's been discussion of tearing it down.
And if we're going to do a bid for an outside contractor or add the weed whacking to your current landscape where they cut the grass, so at least the weeds get knocked down?
So yeah, we could do that.
So there's stone in there, there's a lot of stone in there, like landscaping stone. So if we get the weeds out, we can possibly get that the stone out of there, use it for landscaping. There's a good
That
pile
was
of
a stone.
I think that all came off of the roof. We had stone on the roof. It was stored back there. Do we want to pursue, do we want to look at pursuing bids to get it, or look at what it would cost to tear it down?
It's a concrete block building. The grass is gonna stop growing. Your maintenance team is gonna need something to do before the snow flies. Take a sledgehammer, block by block, tap with a sledgehammer, stack the block with pallets, and they can take it.
Well, that's, we had talked to Heston about, could we get a dumpster
Yeah,
and bulldoze it and put it in the dumpster and get it hauled away?
I don't think you need an outside contractor now to do that, but,
It really is just a timing thing.
You get a couple of your different classrooms, you could have a party to tear it down.
Yeah.
I don't know. You don't need that.
And Zimmerman's is right down the road, so that's not a,
Yeah.
it's not a,
Ask him for a demonstration.
Yeah, show us how that machine works.
swing that.
Can you push this over? Okay.
You go talk to Carl.
I bet if you went and talked to them, they'd come down and knock it over for you.
Probably would. Talk to James then first.
Yeah, yeah. All right, moving on to policy.
Okay, 9.4.1. First, give second reading and final approval to the following policies. I'm going to say, as listed, yes, as listed.
Bob second.
Any comments? Roll call.
Clock,
Yes.
Palmer,
Yes.
Fox,
Yes.
Petrick,
Yes.
Feiler,
Yes.
Rissmiller,
Yes.
Heck,
Yes.
Bats,
Yes.
Kaufman,
Yes.
All right, moving on. 9.4.2. Give first reading with the intent to give second reading and final approval on October 18th, 2022 to the following policy as listed.
Bob second.
Any comments? Roll call.
Palmer,
Yes.
Fox,
Yes.
Petrick,
Yes.
Feiler,
Yes.
Rissmiller,
Yes.
Heck,
Yes.
Bats,
Yes.
Kaufman,
Yes.
Clock.
Yes.
All right, moving on to personnel, Mr. Palmer.
9.8.1, I move that we approve the following resignations. Sierra Glenn as a part-time autistic support paraprofessional. Helen DeLuco as a part-time lunch recess aide. Rebecca Lenrick as a part-time cafeteria worker. And Patrick Slater as the high school student council co-advisor.
Heck, second.
Any comments? All in favor, give their consent by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries.
9.8.2, I move that we rescind the employment of the following: Jennifer Weiner as a life skills support paraprofessional at Penn Burnville.
Heck, second.
Any comments? All those in favor, give their consent by saying aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries.
Okay, I don't have the information in front of me.
It should be on your agenda. I did write it down, whatever was laying in front of you. Oh, you know, I wrote it on Brian's. Okay, got Bill's on the
9.8.3, I move that we approve the following employment: approve the transfer of Diane Lewandowski from a part-time cafeteria worker at the junior senior high school to a full-time cafeteria worker at the junior senior high school effective September 12, 2022. And approve Lindsay Babsack as the Penn Burnville Elementary principal at a salary of $92,000 effective October 1st, 2022, prorated to the number of days worked.
Heck, second.
Any comments? Roll call.
Feiler,
Yes.
Rissmiller,
Yes.
Heck,
Yes.
Bats,
Yes.
Kaufman,
Yes.
Clock,
Yes.
Palmer,
Yes.
Fox,
Yes.
Petrick.
Yes.
Welcome aboard. Welcome
Congrats.
aboard.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited. Thank you.
9.8.4, I move that we approve the supplemental contract for the extracurricular position as listed there.
Heck, second.
We're just doing 9.8.4.
Yes.
Listed them all, okay. Any comments? Roll call.
Rissmiller,
Yes.
Heck,
Yes.
Bats,
Yes.
Kaufman,
Yes.
Clock,
Yes.
Palmer,
Yes.
Fox,
No.
Petrick,
Yes.
Feiler.
Yes.
9.8.5, I move that we rescind the supplemental contract for the winter coach position, William Chapman, assistant high school excellent.
Heck, second.
Any comments? All those in favor, give their consent by saying aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries.
9.8.6, I move that we approve tenure for the following professional staff: Amber Myers.
Bob second.
Any comments? Roll call?
Bats,
Yes.
Kaufman,
Yes.
Clock,
Yes.
Palmer,
Yes.
Fox,
Yes.
Yes.
9.8.7, I move that we approve the following professional staff salary adjustments based on credit attainment according to the collective bargaining agreement as listed there.
Heck second.
Any comments? Roll call?
Kaufman,
Yes.
Clough,
Yes.
Palmer,
Yes.
Fox,
Yes.
Hedrick,
Yes.
Feiler,
Yes.
Rissmiller,
Yes.
Heck,
Yes.
Betts.
Yes.
9.8.8, I move that we approve the following mentors as listed there.
Heck second.
Any comments? Roll call?
Clough,
Yes.
Palmer,
Yes.
Fox,
Yes.
Hedrick,
Yes.
Feiler,
Yes.
Rissmiller,
Yes.
Heck,
Yes.
Betts,
No.
Kaufman.
Yes.
Yeah.
9.8.9, I move that we approve the following lead teacher for the 22-23 school year at the contractual rate of $1,418 to net Sidel Pupil Services.
Heck second.
Any comments? Roll call?
Palmer,
Yes.
Fox,
Yes.
Hedrick,
Yes.
Feiler,
Yes.
Rissmiller,
Yes.
Heck,
Yes.
Betts,
Yes.
Kaufman,
Yes.
Clough.
Yes.
9.8.10, I move that we adjust the supplemental contract for the following fall coach position for the 22-23 sports season as listed there.
Heck second.
Any comments? Roll call?
Fox,
No.
Hedrick,
Yes.
Feiler,
Yes.
Rissmiller,
Yes.
Heck,
Yes.
Betts,
Yes.
Kaufman,
Yes.
Clough,
Yes.
Palmer.
Yes. 9.8.1, or 11, I move that we approve a supplemental contract for the following fall coach position as listed there.
Heck second.
Any comments? Roll call?
Hedrick,
Yes.
Feiler,
Yes.
Rissmiller,
Yes.
Heck,
Yes.
Betts,
Yes.
Kaufman,
Yes.
Clough,
Yes.
Palmer,
Yes.
Fox,
No.
9.8.12, I move that we approve a supplemental contract for the following winter coach position as listed there.
Heck second.
Any comments? Was this an assistant coach, or is this
Yes.
somebody new?
It's a new.
Brand new, brand new. Okay.
So in addition to that, I just had a question, even though we already voted on it, the, back on 9.8.5, so is our head wrestling coach now alone for the time being?
Yes, for the time being.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Roll call?
Feiler,
Yes.
Rissmiller,
Yes.
Heck,
Yes.
Betts,
Yes.
Kaufman,
Yes.
Clough,
Yes.
Palmer,
Yes.
Fox,
Yes.
Hedrick,
Yes.
9.8.13, I move that we approve a supplemental contract for the following extracurricular positions as listed there.
Heck second.
Any comments?
Is this someone new?
Typically, we had a fall assistant director. They requested that it be a costume. The assistant was a costumer anyway, so they wanted to advertise it as a costume so people knew. She is one of our new staff members that came on board this year.
Any other comments? Roll call?
Rissmiller,
Yes.
Heck,
Yes.
Betts,
Yes.
Kaufman,
Yes.
Clough,
Yes.
Palmer,
Yes.
Fox,
Yes.
Hedrick,
Yes.
Feiler,
Yes. 9.8.14, I move that we approve the following substitute staff for the remainder of the 22-23 school year as listed there.
Heck second.
Any comments? Roll call?
Heck,
Yes.
Betts,
Yes.
Kaufman,
Yes.
Clough,
Yes.
Palmer,
Yes.
Fox,
Yes.
Hedrick,
Yes.
Feiler,
Yes.
Rissmiller,
Yes.
9.8.15, move that we approve the following volunteers for the remainder of the school year as listed there.
Heck second.
Any comments? Roll call?
Betts,
Yes.
Kaufman,
Yes.
Yes.
Palmer,
Yes.
Fox,
Yes.
Petrick,
Yes.
Zeidler,
Yes.
Rissmiller,
Yes.
Heck.
Yes.
All right. Any new or old business?
Two things. When's the next architecture meeting?
Tuesday at 10 o'clock,
This coming
this
Tuesday?
coming.
How's the bus?
Where at?
What's that?
Where at? And the other thing, what do we ever decide with the tractors? And the snow plowing and all that sort of thing? Or where are we at with that? Are we using the 2 tractors we have?
You know,
No, I just know that, he sent out the John Deere to somebody, and the guy never,
Yeah.
saying he never got back to that. So I don't know, I'm not sure where we are now.
There's other John Deere dealers you get quotes from.
so we do have it from, we have a quote from the John Deere tractor. What we were doing is, there was somebody that was given to us that had worked at a John Deere tractor with the company and worked independently. He did review it, gave the same assessment that the hours, this was all verbal, we were trying to get something in writing, and that's where we're having the issue. Nelson. We have the tractor.
You want something written?
Yeah, that's what we can't get. My understanding is we can't get it. So the hours on it, from what we were told is the hours are a lot for the model, and that the 4-wheel drive needs to be totally rebuilt, and they weren't sure if it was worth it.
That's what verbally was
That's what
told.
we were. The snowing is,
Yeah, I thought it was like 15 or 18
There
hundred.
are so many hours. But
it's
not
about
much.
2,000 hours. I think it
Yeah,
was.
yeah, not a lot for the.
But from what I understand, that model, I don't know. That's what he had said was a lot for.
Okay.
Are they running the international, the case?
I don't know what they're using, if they're just using it.
We have a.
The 4-wheel drive is the
We actually
issue.
started yesterday for the high school. So
We can use
the field in there.
I know when I talked to Heston about snow today, he was talking and getting quotes on like the Ventrex systems. That could be multi-use pieces, so I know he is.
We talked about this in spring, and he's,
Yeah.
I mean, he should have been, we're getting closer to snow season shortly, so. Something should have been decided before this, he's got to get on the stick.
Is there another option of talking to Deer Country or Kermit Kistler at Kempton New Tripoli?
I think all that was explored. I think it was the board, I mean, we had, and I mean, you were on the board when this all was going on. We had the presentation there of the new tractors and whatnot, and the board gave pushback that we felt it was too much of an investment for what the need was, and that's kind of the last it was brought to.
Well, the answer I remember we kept getting was nobody called me back, but he didn't really chase after him to get answers. So I think either maybe somebody else needs to take the bull by the horns and talk to Deer Country, talk to Kermit Kistler, let's get a dead set estimate on what it's gonna cost to get this thing fixed. I mean, I think somebody's bucking for a new tractor, in my opinion, and I'm with some of these other guys where 1,800, 2,000 hours isn't even hardly broke in yet.
The tractor was at Deer Country, that's who we have the quote from.
And what is the quote?
Offhand, I don't know.
It was, yeah, it was really expensive. That's why we wanted other quotes, because it was like $10,000 or something. And we're like, man, that just seems like
And this
a
isn't
lot.
something that Stockman Tractor can't do, or Zimmerman's can't do, or
That's what this would have been.
Binkley
This
and
would have been
Hurst, or,
This was another aftermarket repair.
right.
That's what he's saying, it's basically saying, you're gonna exceed what you want to put into this.
Did you just have to?
I did, but it's really good.
Oh,
Just going off what Andy.
yeah.
Well, that all depends who's telling you that it exceeds what you want to put into it, because my youngest son works for a John Deere dealer out in Missouri, and what they're teaching that kid and putting in his head, is totally dead set against my 32 years experience as a service technician of we're taught to fix, not to junk. Now, I know your new stuff is not what the old stuff is, but this tractor is nowhere near new. It's probably mechanical, it probably doesn't take DEF fluid, it probably has little to no electronics in it. So you're further ahead even if you're gonna put 20 grand in it versus buying a new one in 3 to 5 years, you got all kind of headaches like anything else electronic. That's just my opinion from what I see in the world I work in. We're fixing 50-year-old washers and dryers because the new electronic stuff lasts 3 to 5 years and it's garbage.
So let's put that back to the Buildings and Grounds Committee to work through and, you know, get
I'll have an answer for you by next week.
yeah. If that takes a Buildings and Grounds meeting just to discuss where we stand, what our expectations are, and how we're moving forward for the winter. Let's get it set up and make it work.
Can you set that up, Amy?
Is that fair, Chris?
Yeah.
Something, at some point, we were talking about one of the fields or something like that, and somebody brought up that the baseball field has a scoreboard and we run a generator to run the scoreboard. Has anybody investigated or priced what it would take to get electric to the scoreboard?
Some of that we talked about when we do the high school renovation,
Yeah, I think
that was getting
that was
service.
all-
to the line.
There was pieces of that
That's
stuff,
all
but I
in
don't know that
there.
there was.
It's all in there.
I mean, that's where it was left at.
Yeah,
was we were
that was
looking at integrating
conversation, we
that.
had them conversations with Jeff.
Yeah, we talked about trenching it at that time.
Yes,
Um,
because we didn't know if the maintenance building was gonna be there, if we could run service from there. There was a lot of unknowns. And yeah, the voltage drop was the other unknown. And I think we're.
I think the
I'm
question
hoping-
was,
I'm-
that do we want to put enough service there to run a snack bar? Or-
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, multiple, do we want to pull a heavy enough feed, or are we just looking to run the scoreboard and that's it? That's what, I think we had left, Jeff had left with us on that.
Correct.
I thought we
But
were,
I think we're almost back to the beginning on that, and, you know, hopefully in the next 2 meetings with Dr. Warhol, we have some direction of how we can reconfigure things within our budget and still get what we want, and then we start bringing that back. Am I saying that correct, Andy?
Yeah, because that, in that area is where we were looking to do the drainage, the turf, the tennis courts, so we could have just fed right off of that electricity as well. I think years ago I had inquired to Rick about it, and he said that the power that runs out to the, if I remember correctly, the power that runs out to the poles powers the lights of the current stadium, but they didn't think that the power could then be taken. We'd have to run a new service out to there. And at that point, this was years ago, the cost was pretty prohibitive to run that.
Is there electric on that part of School Road, or does it
I
come
was gonna
across
say,
the
could
back?
we just run something?
well,
Is it coming up over
Yeah,
the
we would
mountain,
have to
or is
run.
it coming in from New Shaverstown?
it comes from our house,
Okay.
except the
Yeah, I think they're
one on the
right,
right,
so.
like the ones next to the school, up until the school pond. Like everything
Yes. So about the house that's right at the top of the hill.
that's coming over the hill.
Oh, okay. Okay. So we'd have to extend the line to get it down.
But I think that's all underground from the chicken house up to the top of it, somewhere along that.
We're on new business, old business, right? Guess I got something to say. Just brought up a Crabtree. Is there still our engineer? I also cringe when I hear their name because of what happened with our numbers. Mr. Palmer, are we on track? Yes, we are. Are we on track? Yes, we are. That's all we heard, and then when that number came out, it was astronomical. I guess me personally, I don't have
made the comment to Jeff twice now, that you're along with us on this ride now, right? I don't expect all these revisions to be at a cost. You missed. That's on you. You know what I mean? Like, we're in it together. We recognize we all missed. But that's your end. Now work with us to get it to where we can hit the target.
So we met with Jeff last week. Chris, Nev, Dennis, myself, Tom, and Heston met today to kind of see what do we think, like if we didn't build a sixth grade wing, could we reallocate things? Like how can we move things if we didn't do 2 towers and we went to one giant tower in the middle, what could be done? And took floor plans and overlaid the existing floor plan with the new floor plan, and if we didn't move the library, and we kept the library over here, and then we put the fitness center up here, if we didn't touch the the locker rooms, and we left locker rooms in the condition they are, and just refreshed them. So we have that to get to Jeff. I did reach out to Jeff about scheduling a meeting this week so that we can go through that. The problem is we just don't know, as we're moving walls and not moving walls, and are we saving money? Are we costing more? What is that? We know that, a portion of that over budget is the soft costs. We know a portion of that money, because we're basing soft costs off of $75 million of construction versus 64 of what it was, is, some wiggle room. But we just don't know, like, if we don't move the library, is that a $1 million savings? Is that a $200,000 savings? That's the piece where we left at the last meeting, is get our ideas of what we think. I did leave a message and talked for Jeff about if he could look at, like, if we just did one wing, and could we expand it out? And does that give us savings as far as, one elevator, and does it mean, like, is there any way if we expand it out and wider, can we drop to 2 floors or something? So we are trying to internally keep it moving and get that information to Jeff.
I don't want you to lose sight of where we were. Like, I thought we were pretty well on the right track, and I'd be more interested in, like, we talked Christmas time, taking that same building and rebidding it. I mean, I understand scaling back some, but at the same time, when we said it last time, you're going to soon lose the whole point of your views of where you were, what you saw at other schools, what worked, what flowed. I mean, you guys all talked about your building tours that you went, what you saw, and when Jeff laid it out in front of us, I mean, it's like you guys described what you liked, what you saw. I think you're going to lose too much of that, and you're going to have unsatisfactory. I mean, I still agree with scaling back to like a 2-floor tower. I don't know if I'd merge it all into one, but stuff like that. But then I think if we start breaking it, like we talked before, into steps, that start, finish, you're not buying in mass quantity. You're, in the long run, you're still going to be the same dollar a head.
I know I attended the last meeting here with Jeff. One of the comments he made was, now the project's too long. And that's why the contractors are afraid of that risk. And I'm not sure when that changed, because originally they said this was good to be long. Contractors wanted that stability.
That's more like talking about chopping it up today.
I think the concern is how much costs are going to
The inflation, yes.
escalate. And any contractor's probably going to build some massive escalation clause into their contract. I can tell you from my,
But I think we have to take some of that. We're never going to get what we want if we're not willing to take some risk. We have to take some of that risk, and it's just that, it's a risk. Because we're asking them to take all the risk, and it showed in that price. And I asked that question too, how do we take the risk? What can we do? Can we buy the materials and bring them here? Like, how do we absorb that?
And what was their answer?
I think, well, that wasn't possible, I don't,
Some of it, but I don't think it really saved us anything, because then they were saying, well, 2 years from now, when we're doing the next stage, or,
yeah.
I don't know, none of it.
So what was their recommendations out of that last meeting?
He was taking back what we were going through. I mean, I think the general consensus is, one, the only way to bring the costs in line is to reduce square footage. And the other piece is we've got to bring that project down in timeline. And really, the only, the outer pieces are done in 18 months, but it's that center piece that just gets, opened wide, that it just slows the project down. I mean, that's another significant chunk of time. And that's where we were looking, okay, if we don't move the library from here to there, and leave it there, do we gain any time? And those are the conversations that, I need to have with Jeff based off of what we did today is, what do we gain? Like, we're hearing from the contractors that it's too long of a process for me to take the risk. But if we just reduce the square footage and again put it out there and it's a 3-year process, I gotta believe that we're gonna get the same result. Maybe it's a little cheaper, but we're not gonna get the competition. We only had 2 GCs on that. The one that we thought was gonna be a major contender just wouldn't take the 3-year risk. I don't know, I
don't know, and again, I'm right there with Mr. Hack. I would love, even if we, the conversation with our lowest bidder. Okay, what established that price? Let's hear their concerns, they're the ones putting that price in. I mean, I don't know.
Actually, it'd be good to hear some of the concerns from the ones that didn't bid on
Or that,
it. And they,
I honestly think a lot of it is how volatile the market is. Companies don't want to take that risk. I mean, I live that realm every day, and I hear the same thing from a lot of them contractors. The same ones bidding on that job are the same ones I deal with daily, and they all say the same thing. Everything skyrocketing, and they're locked into something. They can either put a massive hurt on them or put them out of business. Depends who it is, how big they are. So I think you got to get an architect either, and I'm familiar with them, they're Cadillac architect, I'll word it that way. I think you either got to get them to start thinking outside the box differently, especially from a timeline standpoint of how that could be built differently. And there are ways to spend it, to speed it up, probably drive the cost down substantially as well. Or you got to start talking to a different architect that's willing to think outside the box.
I think that might be the unfortunate answer. We changed architects with the Crabtree because what they came in and sold us seemed to be the best for us. We changed architects after all them years, and now we got a price that, like I said, if all along they would just answer Bill's question by, no bill's going up significantly, then I got no complaint. But if all those months they said, we're right on track, it's just gonna be a small increase, and he said, this is what it is, and then all of a sudden they open up the bids, and all of a sudden we're way up here, well, how could they miss it by that much? Because they're only gonna be able to cut so much. We don't want to, it's better than, in my opinion, to not do the project than to do it half. Because that's just gonna cost the district twice down the road when we go, hey, guess what? Chris, that came on the board, and one of that no good board member, now we gotta put another $50 million here because he cheapened up the building. And that's what's gonna happen, we're gonna pay for it. So.
When we had those conversations, as we were moving rooms around, we're like, well, could we tuck a science room in there? What happens if in 10 years the population explodes and now we have to put an addition on, and we're like, well, that was stupid, now we just blew $200,000 to put a science room on there. That's where we had a 3-hour-long meeting this afternoon to go through that. And in all honesty, that's where we are. We cut the 6th grade wing off. How can we shift? And how can we push inwards into courtyards? And the end result is, we're tucking rooms in. We're not, we significantly reshaped that center piece that we had opened up. Goes back to trying to bring it back down. I think there's some easy cuts, like you can look on each of the towers, there's the collaboration rooms. Those are easy things to say, let's cut the collaboration pieces off. We could do without those.
But can you?
I would say I think that all this time, as we were building this project, it fit within the budget. So as we looked at pieces, we looked at it and said, this, is it something that we critically need? No, but look at the potential for it, of what we could do. It fits within what we need. Yeah, let's add those collaboration spaces. They are key pieces, but now, we're at the crunch time and we're saying, okay, is it nothing? Or can we give those collaboration? And I think that's the part where we're at.
You still have some collaboration.
There still is. And, we created that huge collaboration space in the middle, but it's 5,400 square foot. In my mind, at, $280 a square foot, hey, that's $1.4 million that
Your open space can't be 200.
Yeah, and I don't know. I don't know. That's where we're at, trying to figure out, okay, we opened up and had the roof high. Can we bring that roof down? And what's the savings to, maybe it's high to a piece and then it slopes down, and now we're back to, that's kind of where we're at. I don't know. It will drastically change the floor plan of what we were looking at.
Next meeting?
On Tuesday morning.
Well, your question of talking to contractors or whatever, I think the best resource we have right now is Dan from Fidevia.
That's what I was just going to ask. Where's the DB?
When the bids were being opened, he was texting them of the GC, he knows them well, so he knows the market, he knows what's going on. So that's the guy we need to get a meet with. If you want to hear the straight shot on it.
Money should be in on some of this.
They weren't in the last one, but they've been in, since we've added them, they've been in on the Tuesday meeting. Like when we were meeting, they were in. I mean, their job was to get as many GCs as possible, or contractors, but, I know there was contractors that talked to Heston and just said, we'd love to bid local, we'd love to bid, we just don't have either the manpower for the size, we can't make that commitment, timeline. That's kind of where we're at.
Going off what Rusty said, could we get the Cadillac plan, or maybe we don't? I know I heard some people grumbling about bids, and they said that there was a lot of extra stuff in there. Now, why that extra stuff is in the building mechanically, I didn't see the prints, I didn't figure out why. I heard some people saying that that's why they were bidding on it, because there's a lot of extra stuff.
Could you get that to us so we could, would they be willing to tell you?
I don't know.
I will say, we went to Crabtree, we sat there and watched all the finishes that they presented. It was Tom, myself, and Chris, and we went in, and I think afterwards I even called Kyle and I said, we just did this. If you look at the virtual tour, it looks high-end. They are reassuring us that this is the most economical product that we can do. And then July 1st, we're told that, oh, well, that stone was $250,000.
Yeah,
Well, then I wouldn't, then we talked, like, we would never have recommended that. Like, brick is fine.
I believe they get in sometimes with, they put on a great presentation, and you get,
Yeah.
you walk into a car dealership, you look
nice, and then you look at the price tag, some people don't care, you know, and that stuff gets passed on to taxpayers and whatnot. And I think that's some of what they do. They go in, they show you, and most times, you know, groups of people are voting on this stuff, and I'm not gonna say it doesn't affect them, but, you know, it affects the rest of the community, and it's just passed on to them. And I wouldn't doubt that they had some figures that, you know, the school board, they'll just go in and push it through. And
At one point, we were discussing different architects, remember? Weren't they the ones, and I questioned it over and over again, weren't they the ones who said that they stand by their price, and they stand firm with their price? Does anyone remember that? And that what it is what it is, and
They missed, and that's why I'm a firm believer, you know, if they're not going to stand by us, and we have to pay to redo this, game's on. Yeah, game's on. I mean, I hate to throw away what we already did, but if we're repaying to redo it,
you're just like, one of mine opinion, you're at the point, from what I've noticed, that you're probably better off starting over.
it truly depends. I mean, and I don't know, you know, again, my 1 of 9 is, there's that much fluff in that project that if it is truly looked at and dissected by practical people that are coming up with a common sense solution, we can get almost exactly what we want, but maybe it doesn't have the frills. You don't need stone. You know, brick is fine.
we renovated 2 elementary schools, and we don't have, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, you know,
Why
I
can't we-
agree. The entrance, yes, you want it to look good, you want people to know where the entrance is. Beyond that, stone walls or block walls, they educate a student the same. It's what we put in that room that
And all
helps.
that glass that they have in the
Glass
presentation.
is probably as economical as your block is. And glass is good for education, I don't care what anybody says, I'll stand behind that. You try and put kids in this room here and teach them all day long, or put them in a room that has natural light, they're gonna learn better naturally. I'm not an educator by trade, but if I'm wrong, an educator, correct?
No, I mean, but we had those those conversations where, you know, does it make sense to put the glass in all the back of that, and the response that we get is, yeah, block's cheaper, but okay, to install a window is cheaper than laying block and then brick over it. So, you know, you get the aesthetic, you get the natural light, it's better to put the glass in. So that's, I mean, these conversations, like, I mean, we have had those conversations, you know, when you get into the classroom portion, it's cinder block, it's painted cinder block. There may be an accent wall that's on the cinder block, and then whiteboards and mobile cabinetry. Like, the classrooms are simple. It is that major centerpiece that did get blown up, you know, height-wise and opened up. But the classrooms themselves are very simplistic. You know, it's just, when you're looking at, you know, in my opinion is, I would think that they would know the difference between concrete board and steel panels. Like, at a time where we were told Amazon's buying up all the steel and there's a premium on steel, then why would we stay with steel as a product? I don't know. There must have been, I would think the architect would know that, but maybe he doesn't. The other piece is, if we do go away from, and Brian, you can correct me, if we do go away from Crabtree, those plans, while we pay for them, retain the proprietary for Crabtree. So all that work stays with them.
Yeah, the second issue is, even if you can get them, another architect is not going to want to build off of those plans. Because he didn't draw them, so he's not going to he's not gonna be willing to be responsible to build off of his plans. If something goes wrong,
I think we're more, I would think
That's
we're
what I'm
more,
saying.
the conceptual of it is what we would want. I mean, obviously, you'd be re-looking at it. I don't know, I think we hold, I think our first game is we hold Crabtree on this hook with us. That's my opinion.
I think at least hold until we put it out for rebid or something in December. Or we don't. We'll reassess from there.
I've asked Jeff twice as well, how that looks, as far as the cost, and he did it either time. And once was here, and I asked him.
Also, it's coming down the last few times.
No, I meant his costs for anything,
And his issue is, what he has told us is, it's not necessarily Crabtree's cost, it's all the engineering firms that have put this project together, whether they're going to hold to their work and cost.
who did they work for? Crabtree.
They work through Crabtree, yeah, so that's the, well,
So what you're saying?
but they were passed through bills, they just passed right through, we paid them directly, they just passed through Crabtree.
At redesign it for you. Right. But to rebid the existing.
Yeah, we could rebid the existing the way it is, we could put it out to bid again tomorrow. In theory. Right? Yeah. Should be right. Just the advertising, all the headache, but I truly don't think you're gonna get a different bid yet.
I mean, if you're one of those bidders, are you just gonna resubmit your current bid? Like, why do all the work again? If, to run that risk, I don't know. Because I've had that conversation several times. Like, could we rebid it in 3 months? Could we rebid it in 6 months? Can we? And Jeff has said that they're not going to go back to the drawing board and say, okay, I'm gonna shave $500,000 off. They'll either just resubmit their bid or not bid again.
Do you think they're willing to break down their bid for us? As far as materials, labor?
That one thing,
We have some of
had
that.
a pretty good breakdown on it.
Received nothing.
So here's another question. If we would get rid of federal funding, do we have to pay prevailing wage to do the project?
we're stuck with that because it's in Pennsylvania,
That's,
which is a problem.
There's some ways to cut some of that out too. That's where somebody thinking outside the box with how they designed this thing could change the landscape of it drastically.
Didn't Hamburg do that with their precast building?
Do they have precast? They did.
Hamburg School District.
I've never seen what they have, but like, that's an option that
Yes, it was brought in.
changes
Yeah.
the timeline of everything, changes the fact that the people producing that aren't paying prevailing wage to have it built. It's assembled somewhere else and brought out and set, so take somebody, Crabtree's not known for that type of stuff.
Anything else in the business end of it?
I agree. I said it up.
Causing me like 40 minutes.
Calendar events is listed there.
The only thing I want to make note is if you're going to the Grandparents' Day, well, say grandparents, but it is on September 23rd, not on the 30th.
Are there any citizens that wish to address the board? Go ahead, stand up, say your name.
Michelle Wright. So I would like some clarification on the grad projects. My oldest child, who's a senior, turned in her proposal on August 29th. My son, who is a 10th grader, turned in his proposal the next day. They're both doing the same project. His was immediately returned, saying that they weren't accepting it. I reached out to Andy as well as all of the principals at the high school asking for some clarification. Their project is they are walking 30 miles in the month of September to raise awareness and funds for Stop Soldier Suicide. They were questioned as how that serves as community service. I don't really understand how it doesn't, especially when a few days after that, there was a post that went out that if you wanted to live stream games, that fulfilled your community service. So I have an issue with what we're picking and choosing as what is community service. There's another student who is a volunteer firefighter for Burnville. His project was not immediately accepted either. It took 18 days for my children's proposal to finally be accepted, and that was after most school board members received emails about it. So I'd like some clarification on one, is there a time frame? I'm a teacher. If my student turns in a piece of work, I have 2 good days to grade it and return it. I think 18 days is unacceptable. That has held up their project. They're obviously very passionate about it because they have a brother and a sister who are currently serving in the military, both graduates from Tulpehocken. We also have a nephew who hung himself in 2018, also a Marine. So it is something that I do personally. I do it's a national campaign. But when my daughter was questioned about why it was community service, she was upset, obviously, because it is something we take to heart. The teacher said that she couldn't find any information, although the principal did send her an email with the site and a link to it, because I do have copies of those as well. And the teacher just went on my Facebook instead and said that I was walking and didn't understand what my kids were doing. So I'd like some understanding of what constitutes a grad project in our school.
So I guess I need a little bit more info from you, just to help me understand. So by the teacher or advisor to that, asking that question, was that questioning the integrity of the project? Or was that question to intrigue or to stir thought into, okay, how is this project community service? Like to show that from your student, or any student for that matter, to why this is, like, why is this a good project?
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Right, and I can't speak for her. I just know that I did have a conversation with Mr. Hamrick about how it works. Obviously, my kids don't know how the funding part of it works. They know they walk, they know they post on Facebook, they made flyers, they did a QR code, they walked 30 miles.
For a project like that, though, maybe they should understand that.
Well, that's what they learn, that's part of the project. This is only the proposal part.
Yeah, but
So
that's what
I would
I guess that's
assume
what I'm
that
asking.
you learn
Shouldn't that
those
be the
things
advisor
through
trying
the
to
project.
retrieve that?
Right,
You know what I mean?
Right.
Could that have been what happened here? And it just kind of got blown up? That's my
I
question.
honestly don't know. I just know that in 18 days, I had 1 discussion with the principal. I had 0 discussions with the teacher. My kids are also at BCTC all day long in the morning, and they are also both athletes. So they do leave school early in the afternoon. There is not a whole lot of time, but I kept every day they come home and I'd say, did anybody come and talk to you? Nope. Did anybody come and talk to you? Nope. So are they
Did anybody
supposed
reach out to
to,
you?
are they supposed to go, not until Friday after this past Friday?
Who's the supervisor for the project? Like, they have to have the supervisor.
Mrs. Moore.
No, you mean like the
Yeah,
community
like-
person they're working with?
Yeah, the
Oh,
person that they're working
The
with.
community person is, he's a veteran, a 20-plus year veteran, who is also a volunteer for the school district, Rob Beckwith.
Could he help, I mean, I know, could there be communication with him and the teacher as to what community service this project is?
So my understanding is that the initial, so the graduation project says, describe the project you plan to complete in detail. That there was not enough detail as to what the project entailed. So, now this is just what's being told me. That there was a conversation with both kids that they needed to add more. Now, I don't know the timeline exactly, if that was added. And that's where, I don't know if that's where the hangup took place.
Well,
I mean, there's nobody that's gonna deny that this is not a worthy cause.
Right.
I mean, absolutely, I think, as soon as you had reached out to me, I called Mr. Hamrick right away, and I think he reached out to you, and we had that conversation of, because I think that's, like you said, like, designing the posters and promoting it and all that. When I talked to Mrs. Moore, when I asked her, what were you told initially, she said, I was told I'm walking the dog. They were
well,
walking the
I mean,
dog.
I can read, I will be participating in the 30-mile dog walk, which is what it's called, challenge to raise awareness and funds for Stop Soldier Suicide. It's a 4-line, I mean, that's all the space they give you. So if you want specific detail, then don't give a 4-line space, because, I mean, I'm a teacher, if I give a student 4 lines to write something and they fill up most of it, okay, you're done. Like, what else, what other details are there?
And then I don't know, the one I saw was of Nick's, then that Mrs. Moore had written more, after talking with him. I don't know if she did that with Bella's or not, where that happened.
She just wrote that she was posting flyers and links for the donations, and then Bella said that she planned on starting September 1st and ending in October 1st, and then she just wrote that she already started it. And then there would just be photos, facts, timelines. I don't know who wrote that. I think Bella, that's Bella's handwriting.
Michelle, can I just get a little clarity on the situation? So we had a great conversation. And we talked about how I advocate the cause so much that I actually wanted them to expand upon it, reach out to the community, reach out to businesses, and actually build on it and actually challenge others to take the challenge along with them. I think what the time frame that took a little bit of time was when one of the students came back to Ms. Moore, and Ms. Moore was accepting kind of the notes that you have on there. I don't think that was in there. So I think Mrs. Moore actually put that in herself. The
She did,
The
yeah.
conversation that we had.
Right.
So I think that was the timeline. Immediately when we spoke, we said the project was going to be approved, 100%. We just wanted to see the expansion of such a great cause.
And I understand that, but how much effort goes into live streaming a game compared to how much effort you're asking them to do or a firefighter in Burnville to do,
So this
compared
is-
to showing up, being taught how to work a camera and live stream a game?
There is a training component to that where they do have to realize how to hook up the equipment. They do have to realize how to transfer from actually filming it, transferring it to getting it online.
But they're not expected to know that before they do a proposal.
They're not supposed to do, proposal's an idea. They're not
Right,
supposed to start.
but
the
that's what I'm
project.
saying, this
Yeah.
wasn't even accepted
All
as a
right,
proposal.
we're kind of getting off track here. I think we've heard your concern. It is my understanding the projects were approved. One thing I do want to clarify, I just went back through, you kind of said that you only learned anything about this Friday. I just went back through my emails. Are you second season form?
No, I learned about it being approved.
Are you Michelle,
Yes.
right, at second?
Yes,
So you're on all these emails?
yes,
Okay. Just, so, you knew it was being worked on?
yes,
Yeah,
but
you were
that's
on
what I'm
all the
asking is,
responses and
how
all
long
that.
is the time? Because 18 days is an awful lot to get an approval.
And I don't know, I know that there was issues with connecting, and I'm not saying that maybe Mrs. Moore didn't take more time than, normally, or that she did. is 18 days excessive from the time you get the proposal to approval? Yeah, I would agree. It should have been approved quicker. I just don't know those factors that, like you said, was it that Mrs. Moore missed them because they were at BCTC? I don't know. I'm not saying that's an excuse. I can tell you that when I spoke to Mrs. Moore, she had one of the graduation proposals for live streaming, and I said to her, it literally said, live streaming. I'm like, do you accept that? She said, no. I got this today. I'm pulling the 2 boys in, and they have to go to Mr. Johnson and find out in specifics what it requires, how many games, what the, and go through that. Part of that is then promoting it. The idea is that because they've got to be able to then present 10 minutes, that we kind of have an idea of what you're going to present 10 minutes on. Because we've had kids that have come up short, and then they have to kind of redo pieces to do that. But I'm not denying that if it was from start to finish 18 days, that was excessive. So, when Chris and I got involved in it, I think I reached out to Chris right away and said, well, of course this is going to be approved. What's the issue? I think Chris may have even mentioned that to you, and I think when Mrs. Beckwith reached out in emails right away, I mean, there's nobody that's going to deny this. I think it's probably one of the best causes we've had. It was just the paperwork. It's just the details in getting that back and forth.
Right. And I understand that, and I appreciate that,
Yeah.
but Bella's a senior, so obviously her stress
Sure.
level is
Sure.
through the roof, and on top of it, she's an athlete, she works, and we have a family farm. So she just wants to start and get it over with. Her sister's at boot camp right now, so like stress in our home is pretty through the roof at this time.
And I think the kids had explained that, they started this project back in the summertime. So, we acknowledge it's a great call. Typically, projects that start prior to approval, none of those hours can count.
Right.
But, the momentum's rolling, the money's being raised, so we want to keep that going on. So, I mean, obviously, like I said, it's a great cause. We're not, if we wanted to be jerks, so to speak, we'd say, absolutely not. You didn't adhere to it. I mean, that's not what we want to do. And so, I apologize that the timeline was drug out. But yeah, I would say 18 days probably was excessive, but I also don't know all those pieces back and forth.
Are kids told to probably, they can't start it until after 9th grade, right?
Right.
So is it being stressed that maybe they should start early and then possibly start thinking about that they could do it over the summertime? Because I know my kids did it over the summer. So if your kids are busy, over the summer kids are less busy.
I think part of it is they're both at BCTC, and normally their project is done through BCTC. BCTC dropped their programs during COVID. So now a lot, because they can't get the kids into the businesses as job shadowing. So now the kids that are at BCTC are
Kind of
scrambling to figure out what they're going to do.
You're right, that is part of it. We have a number of kids that are kind of in that boat.
So, to recap, projects are approved.
Yes,
We concur it took a little bit too long.
yes.
Because of some of the paperwork stuff.
So is there a policy that says after you turn it in, there should be a however many day turnaround?
There is.
Is that something that maybe could be addressed? Because you have students that are stressed. I mean, I talked to the firefighter's mom as well, and
So they have after 9th grade until they graduate to do this.
I think there's
January
a
of
cutoff.
senior
I
year.
mean,
Yeah.
January of senior
You
year.
have to have it wrapped
So
up.
what kind of,
I mean, 2.5 years.
yeah, 2.5 years to kind of
Do a
that.
project, I mean, you wait. I don't think a timeline handing it back is, I mean, yeah, I don't know. I don't think it's gonna solve anything.
I don't know that we would adopt a policy, but we will certainly have that conversation of, listen, there needs to be a quicker turnaround time. Especially when you're a senior and you're up against the clock.
Seniors, I thought got priority anyway.
I will take it to BCTC about bringing it back there.
All right, anyone else?
Tim Ratliff, if I can make a recommendation, it's just something that you might want to think about adding to it that might alleviate part of the problem, is having a Rubik's, developing a Rubik's for it, a grading Rubik's that basically says, that it's giving you a timeline. The students get the Rubik's at the beginning, when it's eligible for it, and it gives them the capability of setting up a timeline a lot easier, and saying that your grades, this particular point, this particular action, because it costs these particular grades. I know that when I do my students, I require Rubik's all the time. If I don't use a Rubik's, I have them create it on their own.
So the projects are actually graded with a rubric.
Rubric, yeah, sorry.
And I don't know that it appears in the, it used to appear in the handbook, so I don't want to misquote, so you know, like, it appeared in the course studies about it.
Yeah.
But I don't know that there's a document that says necessarily, you know, a timeline of this needs to be done at this point, this point, this point. Because we do have some kids that knock it out in, you know, if you think about the requirement is about 30 hours, if they're walking the dog, you know, an hour a day, they could knock it out in 30, you know, days or quicker. And we have some kids that, you know, maybe they volunteer at a nursing home, that they're not going to make that. You know, even at the games, if you're streaming from a JV to a varsity, you're going to knock it out in, you know, potentially 10 home games. The timeline could vary depending on the project, but
Yeah, and some could be longer, like an Eagle Scout project,
Yeah.
you know, that could take a long time.
Anyone else?
John Kissling. My issue's simple, I think. Who's in charge of like notifying for like fire police, like homecoming, we have fire police come up there? Who's in
Mr.
charge?
Johnson usually arranges that.
What's that?
Mr. Johnson usually arranges
Okay.
the fire.
I just wonder because, I mean, it hasn't been an issue, I just don't want it to be an issue because the fire police are actually employees of the municipality they're from, like the Burnville Borough. And to be, like if you talk to the solicitors, they wanted in the minutes and then approval for the fire police to go anywhere, not just up to the high school. So usually I get notified a few days before it, but I'm always prepared because I know it's coming. Like in Jefferson Township, we already approved it upon the request, knowing that it's probably coming. But we should probably have like more than 30-day notice so that it can go through the proper channels through the municipality. So he can just call me or text me. But I just need,
we could do like an
Well-
annual thing?
well, it's supposed to be, like, when we get requests for our fire police or wherever to go, other places, it's usually a written request that the borough gets, and then they can shoot it down or approve it, and then it has to be in the minutes and everything approved that way. So it really should be a written request to us.
So we could do a written request for, let's just say, calendar year 2023, that, would that cover you? For your liability purposes, would that cover you?
Sure, if the school district said, we need the fire police on these 6 days.
Yeah, if you give the dates.
And you approved it in your
Yeah.
minutes. You
Yeah,
got the same
yeah.
issue. The issue of the minutes is for your workers' comp.
So you got homecoming, you
Yeah,
got graduation.
yeah, there's like 3 of them maybe or something like that. I don't remember them all, but.
Yeah.
It wasn't,
You-
like I said, it wasn't a problem, and we're prepared for it. It's just sort of a, I don't, if something were to happen to one of them, and it's not in the minutes and approved at the meeting, that's all it is.
It's a workers' comp issue.
Yeah, that's all.
I know when we did, I know in the past, Brent or we did the Easter egg hunt, we had contacted Lori Deck. I think we had
Yeah.
contacted her through email or phone, I may have phone, I think it was phone.
Well, that's how Lori brought it up this
Yeah.
last meeting, that we put it in our minutes a while, that if requested for homecoming, at least it's in our minutes, but we should really have that,
Advance notice.
yeah,
Okay.
to do it right, especially for the borough, because the workman's comp actually is from the borough, not from Jefferson Township. Same as if Harrisburg's there, their workman's comp is from Tulpehocken Township.
So we can do that.
So it's just in case something were to happen, that's all. I mean, it hasn't been a problem at all, but I think that we should just make sure if something were to happen, that we're covered.
Yeah, same for if you want fire police, a couple to the Bethel school, that request should go to the township, so the township approves it. So
Right.
again, like you said, the workers' comp insurance covers it.
We can do that.
Thank you for that.
Anyone else? All right, look at the motion to adjourn.
Heck, second.